In tonight's Power Panel, Fox News contributor Richard Fowler, from the Wall Street Journal, Fox News contributor Jason Riley, and the former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush, Brad Blakeman. Gentlemen, welcome to all of you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
All right, Brad, I want to start with you because you were in the middle of these recounts in 2000. You know what this is like, and now we have multiple states where this is happening. To Leland's point there, the Abrams campaign manager in Georgia said this: they've been preparing for all possibilities. Voters who previously elected to vote by mail are receiving by mail today an absentee ballot application for the December 4th runoff, and we just approved a $250,000 TV buy. They are not conceding, Brad.
They are not, but the math just doesn't work in Georgia, and it's putting, in my opinion, good money after bad. They shouldn't be putting that kind of investment out and putting that false hope out to their supporters. They should be conceding. Now, there is something to be said about the Florida races as well as the Arizona races. Those are clearly not over until every vote is counted there. The math is there to warrant the kind of recount that is mandatory, but certainly not in Georgia.
All right. So, Richard, by tomorrow at 5 p.m., by Tuesday, 5 p.m., and in Georgia, all the counties are supposed to certify. It's supposed to go to the state, and this is supposed to be over. I would imagine there's going to be legal action in Georgia because I don't know how they resolve this with the two sides so entrenched at this point.
Yeah, I definitely think this will end up at the courts, and I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad Brad brought that up, the ideal of a recount, an ideal of how long it takes to actually count votes, right? I mean, I think what people assume is that on election night, when networks make projections that those are actual winners, and that's not necessarily true. They're called projections for a reason. We have to wait for these individual counties and the Secretary of State in every state of the union to actually certify the election. That takes 3, 4, 5, sometimes 7 days to get done because you have to count absentee ballots from the military, you have to count absentee ballots from diplomats, absentee ballots from citizens abroad, provisional ballots, and that takes some time. So instead of us rushing this process, which I've seen a lot of folks push us to do, including the president, why don't we let these votes just get counted? That is what democracy is about, counting votes. It
takes time. And now, listen, a lot of people are wondering what's going on in Arizona. Every state is allowed to run these things within certain parameters the way that they want to. I mean, they all have different, state statutes and that kind of thing. In Arizona, the fact that it's taking so long, really not that unusual. The Washington Post writes about this and says state law requires the envelope, because so many people vote by mail in Arizona, the envelope to be sealed and signed and for elections officials to match each signature to the one on file with the voter's registration before even opening the envelope. In this election, that's about 1.7 million individual signatures that had to be confirmed one by one. Total of about 2.3 million votes were cast in Arizona. And Jason, the new totals tonight continue to tick Sinema up, the Democratic challenger there. Any path you see for McSally at this point, the Republican?
It's looking tough for the Republicans out in Arizona, but I don't think that there's as much suspicion about the process going on out there as there is back east, particularly down in Florida. I mean, we know that some Democrats have trouble accepting that they've lost elections. We saw this in 2016, and it looks like it's continued earlier this week. But I think the Republicans, particularly in South Florida and Broward County, have reason to be suspicious. The election supervisor there has been repeatedly reprimanded by judges for destroying ballots illegally, counting other ballots in secret. And the real question is whether the Democrats that are going down there right now are there because of ballot integrity or there to change the outcome of the election. And I think that Republicans are right to be skeptical of the process down there.
I want to make sure that we spend some time on Florida and get all of you to weigh in on this. So I will ask you to move a little bit briskly. Brad, I want to start with you. Mark Elias, who is the attorney who represents a number of Democrats and is a household name to a lot of people in these races and in these fights in court. He says this: breaking as provisional ballots are counted and counties canvassed, the margin in Florida Senate's race has fallen under 15,000. I expect the margin to tighten further in advance of tomorrow's noon deadline. And as I said before, this is a jump ball going into the recount, Brad, which could be triggered as soon as 3 o'clock tomorrow.
It could, but there's something very suspicious that in 67 counties in Florida, whenever there's a problem, it always comes down to the Democratic strongholds of Broward and Palm Beach County. I witnessed it firsthand. The governor had to bring a lawsuit in order to get his people in there to conduct some oversight. We had to do the same thing in the Florida recount in 2000. There were ballots found in 2000 in trunks of cars and in hallways. And the ballot security was non-existent. So the integrity is a question here because they have a history
I'm glad
of
you
it.
brought up integrity, Brad, because the FDLE, the Florida Department of Law, the law enforcement the law enforcement body for the state of Florida, has already looked into this and said they see no evidence of fraud.
But so is a judge. It's not talking about fraud.
Guys, just so people know, there have been 2 rulings today that seem to benefit the Scott campaign at this point, because there is, there are state statutes here in play and reporting and transparency.
I agree.
That, that needs to be handled. Now, Jason, I want to give you a final word in here, too, because Bill Scher, an attorney who's dealt with a number of these problems in Broward County, says he's been filing lawsuits against Brenda Snipes ever since she was appointed for voting irregularities in Broward County. Brenda Snipes and her election apparatus causes everybody to have doubts about where these votes are, how many are left. And, Jason, that's not fair to the left or the right, Republicans or Democrats or anybody else who voted.
Right. No, there are problems with this election supervisor. There's a track record of shenanigans down there. And, yes, everyone knows that all the votes should be counted. But we need consistent rules to make sure all of the votes are counted the right way and consistently and fairly on both sides. And, again, Republicans have reason to be suspicious. Democrats...
No, wait a minute, Jason. Let me just say
guys,
this.
We're going to run out of time. We're going to run out of time. But, listen, we know that there are many other court orders that have come out tonight that are going to kick in tomorrow. And listen, we know this is far, far from over, but I appreciate Jason's use of the word shenanigan because it's underutilized, in my opinion. Richard, Jason, and Brad, thank you all very much.
Thank you.